In 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte launched an invasion that would dramatically reshape Europe, a daring march into Russia with the largest army Europe had ever seen. This is the story of grand ambition, harsh elements, and a campaign that spiraled into disaster. At the dawn of the 19th century, Europe's landscape of power teetered on the edge of change. The Treaty of Tilsit, forged in 1807 between Napoleon Bonaparte and Tsar Alexander I, initially promised peace and mutual support against Britain. However, as the years passed, Russia chafed under the restrictions of Napoleon's continental system, which aimed to economically isolate Britain. The strains of these economic sanctions began to show. As Russian merchants grew desperate under the stifling trade conditions, Russian defiance in continuing trade with Britain not only sparked Napoleon's ire, but also highlighted the growing schism between the two empires. Viewing this as a direct challenge to his authority and a breach of their alliance, Napoleon's response was swift and decisive. By 1812, diplomatic ties had soured, prompting Napoleon to assemble an immense force aimed at bringing Russia back into line. This was not merely a military maneuver, it was a calculated statement of power, intended to secure Napoleon's dominance over Europe and punish any dissent. In preparation for his monumental campaign against Russia, Napoleon meticulously amassed the Grande Armée, one of the largest forces ever assembled in history, comprising over 600,000 men drawn from a myriad of nations under French control. This vast assembly was a testament to Napoleon's unmatched ability to mobilize and command a diverse and sprawling military coalition. Frenchmen stood shoulder to shoulder with Italians, Germans, Poles, Spaniards, and others, each contingent marked by its unique uniform and banners, adding a vivid patchwork of colors to the ranks. The logistical effort to supply and maintain such a massive force was unprecedented, involving extensive networks of supply wagons, vast quantities of food, and a continuous trail of support staff and artillery that stretched back to the heart of France. As the army surged eastward, the sheer scale of this operation showcased not just military might, but a deliberate display of power, intended to intimidate and enforce compliance from the Russian Tsar. On June 24, 1812, the Grande Armée crossed the Niemen River, marking the official start of Napoleon's invasion of Russia. As tens of thousands of troops filed across makeshift bridges under the cover of darkness, the enormity of the campaign began to unfold before their eyes. The river crossing was meticulously planned down to the last detail, yet it symbolized the first step into a vast and uncertain territory. Napoleon's confidence was high as he led his troops into Russian lands, spurred by visions of a swift victory that would not only secure his empire's eastern borders, but also firmly assert his dominance over Europe. However, this initial crossing, filled with determination and grandeur, was also the beginning of what would become one of the most grueling and devastating military campaigns in history. As Napoleon's Grande Armée advanced deeper into Russia, they encountered a strategy they were ill-prepared to face. The Russian army, under the skilled command of Generals Barclay de Tolly and later Mikhail Kutuzov, implemented a scorched earth policy, deliberately retreating while burning crops, villages, and resources. This calculated destruction left the French forces bereft of the necessary supplies or shelter, critically stretching their supply lines to dangerous lengths. Despite several tactical victories that showcased their military prowess, the French found little to sustain their massive, sprawling army. Moreover, the Russians also engaged in relentless guerrilla warfare, constantly harassing French units, ambushing them, and effectively cutting off stragglers. As winter approached, the combined effects of scant food and shelter, along with the onset of the harsh Russian winter, began to take a devastating toll on Napoleon's troops, sapping their strength and morale. On September 7, 1812, the Grande Armée faced the Russian forces in the fierce Battle of Borodino, the largest and bloodiest single-day action of the Napoleonic Wars. Just 70 miles west of Moscow, over 250,000 men clashed in a brutal struggle for control. Napoleon's forces, under his direct command, launched wave after wave of relentless assaults against the well-fortified Russian positions. Staunchly led by Marshal Kutuzov, the battlefield was soon enveloped in smoke and the din of combat, as both sides engaged in a desperate fight for supremacy. Despite suffering enormous casualties, with around 30,000 French and 40,000 Russians killed or wounded, neither side achieved a decisive victory. However, the French managed to capture the main positions on the battlefield. This Pyrrhic victory allowed Napoleon to march into Moscow, though it left his army critically weakened and far from defeating the resilient Russian forces. Despite the heavy toll of the Battle of Borodino, Napoleon's weakened army continued to push forward, entering Moscow on September 14, 1812. To their astonishment, they found the city nearly abandoned, a ghostly echo of its former self. The Russian command had strategically ordered a tactical retreat, leaving only a skeleton crew behind who set fires throughout the city. A desperate yet calculated act of defiance. The fires raged for days, destroying large parts of Moscow and further depriving the French forces of much-needed shelter and supplies. This strategic move left Napoleon's army in a dire situation, far from home and without the resources needed for the impending winter. As Napoleon waited in vain for a Russian surrender that would never come, the harsh Russian winter began to set in, compounding the already dire challenges faced by his troops, marking a turning point in the campaign. By October 1812, with Moscow in ruins and no Russian capitulation in sight, Napoleon was forced to order a retreat. The once mighty Grande Armée faced its most harrowing journey yet. As they retreated, the brutal cold, dwindling supplies, and the relentless Russian guerrilla attacks took a severe toll. The temperatures plunged as the army trudged through snow and ice. Starvation and disease decimated the ranks, while skirmishes with Russian forces mercilessly picked off those lagging behind. One of the most devastating moments came as they crossed the Berezina River in late November. Under dire conditions and fierce enemy fire, the crossing resulted in massive casualties, with approximately 25,000 to 30,000 men lost. This retreat was not just a military maneuver, it was a desperate fight for survival, with each step away from Moscow marking a deeper descent into despair and a catastrophic reduction in the army's numbers. The catastrophic retreat from Russia marked a pivotal moment in Napoleon's decline, signaling the crumbling of an empire that had once dominated the European continent. Out of the initial 600,000 men who began the campaign, fewer than 100,000 battled survivors staggered back into Allied territory, a stark testament to the harshness of the Russian winter and the relentless pursuit by Russian forces. The Grande Armée, once feared across Europe, was left shattered, its strength and morale irreparably damaged. The once invincible legions were now a shadow of their former selves, with their defeat sending shockwaves through Europe. This devastating loss emboldened nations previously subdued or hesitant to challenge Napoleon, leading to the formation of new coalitions against him. Nations like Britain, Russia, Prussia, Sweden, Austria, and several German states now saw a new opportunity to curb French influence. The disaster also ignited a wave of nationalism across Europe, particularly in Germany and Russia, catalyzing shifts towards independence and resistance. This newfound spirit of nationalism began reshaping the political landscape, setting the stage for future conflicts and realignments. Ultimately, the Russian campaign significantly weakened Napoleon's grip on power, setting the stage for his eventual abdication and the reshaping of European borders. The fall of Napoleon would usher in a new era of balance and diplomacy in Europe, marked by the Congress of Vienna, which sought to restore old boundaries and reduce the likelihood of such widespread conflict in the future. The Russian campaign of 1812, a monumental endeavor marked by ambition and hubris, stands as a stark lesson in the limits of military power. Napoleon's failed invasion not only shattered his Grande Armée, but also fundamentally altered the course of European history. It demonstrated the devastating effects of underestimating logistical challenges and the harsh realities of war. The resilience of the Russian people and their strategic use of scorched earth tactics redefined guerrilla warfare and inspired nations under the yoke of an empire to rise up. As we reflect on this pivotal chapter, we see how it paved the way for a new era in Europe, one where balance and coalition would become key in maintaining peace and reshaping nations. If you've enjoyed this dive into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join us on more epic journeys through the past.